Hello, excellent people. This is your Daily Excellence for April 27th, 2021. Today I want to talk about pain. Specifically, I want to talk about pain as a criterion for decision making. And what inspired this was my friend Chris Herndon posted a pretty good question on his LinkedIn asking about people's thoughts on using pain as a decision maker. In particular, he was talking about how people seem to tend to not make the hard decision to change or to transform themselves, to change their circumstances until the pain in their current undesirable circumstance becomes unbearable. And I liked what he had to say, and I did my best to kind of respond to it, but then realized that I had more to say, and I figured I'd go ahead and just use that topic for today's Daily Excellence. So, in particular, I want to draw attention to, I guess, the thing that I was talking about with him. Pardon the gunshots in the background, I live in the country. So, I was talking with him about how I think that, yes, on the least strategic level of decision making, people will resist change or put off a decision that's a hard decision until they become so the negative circumstances that are driving the need for the decision become so unbearable that they have no better choice but to change or to decide. That's kind of low level, non strategic. I would consider that kind of almost like animal, right? This is like purely tactical, no long vision. I use tactic and strategic as sort of proxies for short term decision making and long term decision making. And I think that's useful as a baseline observation. But then I wanted to kind of dig into how you can use pain as a decision making metric for in a more strategic sense. So, strategically thinking, there are two really obvious ways that you can deal with pain other than what I just described. The first one is recognize that the pain is coming and make the adjustment ahead of time. So you work in a company and you've got a change in leadership on the top level. And you say to yourself, oh man, this change in leadership is going to make things miserable. I just feel it. And you look for a new job and you get a new job as soon as you can and you get out of that position before it ever got painful. And you may have been right, you may have been wrong, it doesn't matter because you've made the decision based on the anticipation of the coming pain. Alternatively, in that same scenario, you tell yourself, you know what, there's going to be a bunch of pain coming ahead, there's going to be a bunch of growing pains for the company, and a bunch of people are going to attrit, and after the initial attrition and the initial crunch and the pain and the discomfort, there's going to be an opportunity for those who were steadfast and loyal and able to suffer. And those people will have the ability to level up in a way that they would not have been able to had they not been exposed to the pain in the first place. And so in that situation, our person sits tight and suffers for 6 months, a year, 3 years, hopefully not longer than that in the context of a employment transition. I think that would probably be one of the worst managed transitions if it takes them 3 years of new ownership to get to a level of being positively productive. Certainly if that's a publicly traded company, they're going to be in deep shit. So anyway, this person suffers through the pain. They acknowledge the pain and they acknowledge that there is a reward on the other side of the pain. And so those, like I said, are kind of your two super basic strategies when thinking about pain as a impetus for decision. And I think that both of those are strategic versus the pure tactical thing. Because so the example of the pure tactical is rather than being the person who gets out early or the person who doesn't get out at all, you're the person who just says, oh, hey, management has changed. Huh, that's a thing. Keep doing your job. And then life gets miserable and you're like, wow, work really sucks now. It used to not suck and it does now. And then it sucks more, and then it sucks more, and then you leave, except you leave without having planned to leave. Like the person who in the beginning planned to leave and leave in a way that was opportunistically advantageous. And you don't stick around like the person who had planned to stick around, and instead you leave, and you may or may not leave in good standing with the company. You may or may not leave in a way that gets you set up for success in your next endeavor. And I think that's the key to, that's the key reason why you would want to use a strategic decision-making perspective when considering pain. Because if you just let the pain drive you, you will have no known threshold at which you're going to decide. It's just going to be a purely subjective. It might vary from day to day. Like one day you feel pretty good with the pain, and the next day the pain's unbearable. And because you haven't set a threshold in your mind, you don't have a goal in mind, that day that the pain's unbearable, that's the day that you just walk out, right? Whereas your brother in arms, the person, your coworker, who it wasn't unbearable for them that day, they stuck around to the next day, and the next day, whatever it was that was so unbearable got solved, just like that, because for some reason that's what it took to solve it. So this is me trying to create a bit more of a concrete example for this. I actually used my jiu-jitsu experience to describe how this works whenever I was commenting on Chris's post. And I don't think that I was as articulate as I could have been. So I think what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and stop this video now and make a second video that'll be a part 2 that'll be using the martial arts application, the martial arts experience, because I think that there's a similar example to the one I already gave, but maybe seeing it with a second example might help folks to wrap their head around the problem a bit better. And then 2, there actually are some psychological results to having learned how to deal with pain both in the short and long term, like I've been describing, that I think I can expand upon, but I need a little bit more time to do it. So we're going to do a separate video about the martial arts aspect. So go ahead and hop on over to the part 2 or go to the comments and let's continue this conversation. I may try to continue this conversation via Chris's chat as well. So if you're friends with him, or if you're able to get involved in that conversation, I think this is a good one. So I'd like to keep it going, and I appreciate you taking the time to hear me out on breaking this down in a bit more detail than was really able to do with just a response in a chat.